So every single year, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation puts out the Gas Tax Honesty Report, and we called it that originally because back in the day, people used to think that every cent of a gas tax went into roads and bridges. Turned out, even decades ago, that wasn't quite true. It actually goes into general revenue, and then of course from there it's portioned out. This year, I really wanted to highlight actually some good news, because this is a lot cheaper than it was this time last summer. And that's because we do not have the carbon tax anymore. The consumer federal carbon tax is gone. This is a huge win for taxpayers.
Alberta may have finally shaken off the hated federal consumer carbon tax, but according to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, taxpayers are still getting fleeced by another one hiding in plain sight. At a press conference in West Edmonton on Friday, CTF Alberta Director Chris Sims celebrated the end of Ottawa's carbon tax at the pumps, a victory that means families are saving around $13 every time they fill up a minivan and $20 on a pickup truck. But she didn't mince words about what's still draining Alberta wallets, Alberta's so-called industrial carbon tax.
We actually do have an industrial carbon tax in Alberta. It's frozen, but it's super weird that we have one because the province of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, has come out and said, you know what? We're now a carbon tax-free province. We don't want to do this anymore. We're done. And so we're calling on Alberta Premier Danielle Smith to do the same thing. Get rid of the industrial carbon tax in Alberta. Now we know what they're going to say. They're going to say something like, oh, well, the oil companies say we need it. No, we don't. Tell the oil companies that we no longer have an industrial carbon tax here. They're going to keep doing business here. They're not going to run away and leave and take the oil sands with them.
The CTF's latest gas tax honesty report shows that even with Alberta boasting the lowest pump prices in the country, more than 20% of what drivers pay still comes straight from taxes. Chris Sims argued that keeping an industrial carbon tax in place is a Trojan horse, hidden, murky, and guaranteed to hurt working families once Ottawa decides to ramp it up some more.
The reason why we're urging her to do this now is because we know that Prime Minister Mark Carney is currently figuring out his industrial carbon tax. He promised it during his campaign. He promised it during the election. He says he wants to strengthen the carbon tax.
Three aspects of our climate plan that are relevant here. One is there is an industrial carbon price, but question what happens with the proceeds from that carbon price and to what extent is it reinvested in the industry? As our businesses, as a big industry, decarbonize, we don't want foreign steel coming here that's high carbon, right? From Asia, from America. So we will have a carbon border adjustment mechanism that prevents that from happening.
Sims also warned that unless Alberta scraps its levy outright, the province risks giving federal bureaucrats and industry insiders cover to push their next scheme, Carney's so-called industrial carbon tax plan.
And all throughout his book, Values, that he wrote while he was the UN Special Envoy on this topic, he stressed the need for carbon taxes. And so if we start with a clean slate, no carbon taxes whatsoever here in Alberta, we're going to be on a much stronger footing to deal with Ottawa, with what comes next.
Governments rely on carbon taxes not for fighting climate change, but for general revenue. When Saskatchewan scrapped their industrial carbon tax, they forgot to cut spending, and then they ended up with a deficit.
So that is why I would still keep on putting pressure on the Alberta government to do the right thing and be a leader. And us having a frozen industrial carbon tax is weird. If you asked the average person across Canada, name me the one place in Canada that has a carbon tax-free zone, they'd probably guess Alberta, but they'd be wrong. So I want Premier Smith to fix that.
We just heard in Alberta a bit of an ugly fiscal update, but the same thing is happening in Saskatchewan. And critics of pausing the industrial carbon tax here in Alberta will say, oh, but look at the damage pausing the industrial carbon tax did in Saskatchewan.
As far as we're told, the industrial carbon taxes in Alberta isn't exactly a revenue stream generator for the province and the government. Now, we could stand corrected, but that's our understanding. It's more of an agreement between the industry itself and the government, and it winds up kind of being a closed circle. That is not the issue. The issue, obviously, is the drop in the price of the barrel of oil. and our government is too big. Okay. I don't know why AHS boasts on its website biggest like government healthcare thing.
Horrifying.
It's so strange. Like
Right.
that is not something to brag about. If
Right.
you want to say you've got the best doctors, the best surgeons, best nurses,
Low wait times.
that's great. Low wait times, everybody's happy, like low infection rates post surgery. Those are things to brag about. Being the biggest, that's not great.
Yeah.
Because they're really still bloated with a lot of middle managers.
Yeah.
So she has to look there. By she, I mean Premier Daniel Smith. She also has to really rein in any frivolous spending. And when we hear Finance Minister Nate Horner say, oh, well, we're looking under all the couch cushions to find savings. Are you, though? Because you just
Right.
handed $128 million to a super rich NHL hockey team.
Right.
So that is not an indicator of strong fiscal discipline and clipping coupons. I know that when people are dealing with tight times, they're usually not buying big flat screen TVs. They're usually cutting back on stuff and they're eating a lot of macaroni.
Right. And it's time for the government to eat a lot of macaroni.
Yeah, let's have some tuna casserole recipes sent in to Edmonton.
Carbon taxes do nothing to help the environment. They only make governments richer and families poorer, no matter where on the supply chain these taxes are imposed.
If your issue when you wake up in the morning is global emissions, carbon taxing Canadians does nothing to reduce the global emissions arithmetic problem. How we actually tackle that problem is selling cleaner fuels such as natural gas to places like India, who are begging and asking us to sell them our natural gas. It's right in their government directives. They want to switch because right now it's between 200 and 300 million people every day are burning wood, garbage, and animal dung. Like the emissions coming out of there are very heavy, super crazy indoor air particulates too. I will also point out that it's often women and children in poor areas who are out gathering those fuels. So from both a social justice perspective and an environmental perspective, us producing things like natural gas and shipping it around the world is definitely going to make a bigger dent in that whole global emissions arithmetic problem.
For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. Carbon taxes, carbon levies, carbon adjustments are all part of the Great Green Reset. Fight back. Sign our petition at nogreenreset.com.